much in so many different ways.
The little things mean a lot.
Yeah.
But how about the other teams? What happened to the Thunder that failed?
What happened with Oklahoma City was a complete and unmitigated disaster. That's exactly what happened. Game 6 was a prime example. Russell Westbrook, the numbers showed that he had a really great game, but unfortunately, he didn't get any help whatsoever from Paul George or Carmelo Anthony. And this leads me to believe, I think that trio is going to break up. I think Paul George might look elsewhere to try and establish himself and maybe chase a title. I think Melo might do the same. Who knows? I mean, after the series that they had with Utah, and there's nothing to take away from what the Jazz did. The Jazz had a terrific series. And again, Donovan Mitchell showed why he should be the Rookie of the Year. But Paul George and Carmelo Anthony did next to nothing in Game 6 when it mattered. And then you've got the exit interviews that the media did, and Carmelo Anthony basically made himself look like another stereotypical selfish player, saying he was going to refuse to do a lesser role on a team, whether it was Oklahoma City or whether it was somebody else. He is only a starting forward.
But wasn't he starting?
Yeah, Melo was starting, and a lot of people were asking whether he should probably accept a bench role if he wants to win a championship. He made it loud and clear he's not going to accept a bench role. And when you think about it, at his advanced age, which is saying a lot considering he's still a young guy. He's only 34. But with his career being in the twilight now, maybe it's time for him to do a little sacrificing if he really does care about winning a title down the road.
I think it all depends on what team he's on. That's the thing. If he's got good players around him, then I'm sure he'll accept, because all he wants to do is win a championship, a ring, and a title. So I'm assuming that, let's say he went to a really good team, he would accept that role. But for now, he's not on that team. While he's Paul George leaving to go to Lakers or the Spurs, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
But now, who did the Warriors beat again?
Golden State practically breezed past San Antonio. New Orleans swept Portland. So now the Warriors and Pelicans are squaring off against each other. Houston wound up going past Minnesota in 5 games. And there was Utah, which wound up beating OKC in 6 games. So it's Houston and Utah. They already played each other yesterday, and Houston wound up gaining the edge in the first game because James Harden had another terrific game.
So you think it's going to be Houston and the Warriors?
At this rate, it looks like it is going to be Houston versus Golden State.
How do you see that? If it does happen, how do you
If it does go that far, I still like Golden State in this series. I think it's just a matter of time before Steph Curry is able to be at least 90% to return to play for the Warriors. I still like the Warriors. I still say they're the better team of the two. The records don't say it, but Golden State is much better defensively. They've got much better shooters, and they've got more superstars to work with, which is saying a lot considering Houston has Harden and Chris Paul.
Now, how do you see the Cavaliers on that side of the spectrum?
I'll tell you right now, Cleveland was really lucky to beat Indiana the way they did, because Indiana gave them a real fight. They were really strong defensively. Victor Oladipo showed that he could be a real star in this league. He was the guy that shined for the Pacers in that series. The only reason why Cleveland even won that series in 7 games is because they had the better player of the two teams, which is LeBron, of course. And LeBron practically saved that series in Game 5 with his buzzer beater.
Mm-hmm. And anybody else playing?
Yeah, Philadelphia is going to be playing Boston in the second round. Philly basically discarded Miami, and Boston practically escaped with their lives when they beat Milwaukee going the distance. That was a series in which the home team won every single game in that series, but Boston was the better team, mostly because they were a lot tougher defensively, and more importantly, they were a hell of a lot more athletic than Milwaukee was. Milwaukee, I'm telling you, if it weren't for Giannis Antetokounmpo, that team would be an afterthought in that league. Giannis Antetokounmpo really showed his muster in that series.
Do you think right now who's going to play who now? What's the bracket on that?
So Philly has Boston in the second round. Now Cleveland's going to be playing Toronto in the second round. Toronto had a bit of a tough time with Washington, but overall, Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan were the two best players in that series, and they wound up wrapping it up in 6. So now Toronto has Cleveland. Let me tell you this. An NBA champion, if a team wants to win a championship, they have to play better in their first-round series than what Toronto showed in their series with Washington. I remember when the Bulls had their 2 three-peats, the Bulls never lost a first-round game, much less the first-round series. They swept their way into the second round and then beyond.
Yeah, but those were some tough teams, and they had a great team. They really had it seemed like they had an all-star team. Not that the other teams were a flash in the pants either, because those other teams were good too, but Chicago was enormous, and they got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
They did get lucky, but so how do you see the Sixers?
I'll tell you, this could be probably This is probably the series that the Sixers finally get to that next level, because Boston is still missing their point guard. Philadelphia has a whole bunch of weapons that they can work with. I mean, Joel Embiid, who's a beast in the middle. Ben Simmons, the point forward, who is just an outstanding passer in addition to being a threat, both creating for himself and for teammates, as well as pounding the boards. J.J. Redick, who's a terrific shooter. T.J. McConnell, who's a very underrated guard. Robert Covington, a guy who's also very underrated. And with Boston, which not only is well coached, but they're also much more athletic on each side of the ball. I see this series going probably 7 games. In fact, I think it is going to go 7 games, and I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia won this series, to be honest with you. I think Philadelphia's the better team.
And then Toronto, Cleveland?
Toronto's got the best backcourt. Cleveland's got the best player, and hands down, I will take the team that has the best player any day. I like Cleveland in that one, in at least 6 games. Let's
say, how do you see, let's say it was Boston against Cleveland.
A Boston versus Cleveland series, that would be really, really hot. I'll tell you that right now. I think Boston will give them problems defensively. Cleveland has got to get more production from their role players, because there were times, when some of their supporting guys like Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver and Kevin Love, we wondered where these guys were. In fact, going into yesterday, Tristan Thompson played 24 minutes in the entire series. Finally, they decided to give him some more playing time. He had a terrific game. He had 15 and 10 and also came away with a blocked shot. If they get more production from their role players, I think Cleveland wins this series.
How do you see if the Sixers make it and Cleveland makes it? How do you see that game?
That's going to be really tough for Cleveland, because Philadelphia, I think Philadelphia is a lot more tougher in the middle. I think Cleveland is better defensively at center, but Cleveland, as always, has the best player. I think Philadelphia has a lot more to work with. They could probably go with Embiid and Simmons and J.J. Redick, T.J. McConnell, Robert Covington. They could probably go 8 or 9 deep, maybe even 10 deep, and probably steal. They could probably steal the series.
How do you see Toronto if they do beat Cleveland? How do you see Toronto faring against Philly or Boston?
That's going to be really interesting, though, because whereas Toronto has the best backcourt and probably the most explosive backcourt, Philadelphia, I think, has more to work with. They have probably a plethora of guys that they could go to try and get a big basket. Although at this rate, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are the two guys that the Sixers are going to look to in order to try and get a big basket. Not only that, but the thing about Embiid is Embiid has also added a perimeter game to his arsenal. He's also shooting the three-pointer a little bit. So this is going to open up the middle a little bit for the Sixers against any opponent.
How do you see the Boston? How do you see Boston coming out of this? Boston matching up.
Boston matching up against Philly or Boston matching up against Toronto?
Toronto.
That's another interesting scenario right there. Two division rivals. I'll tell you right now, Boston versus Philly is going to be really explosive. Those are two franchises with a long, long history of playoff matchups against each other. That's one thing that we also forgot to mention. Boston and Philly have had a lot of very famous playoff series against each other. There was the famous steal by John Havlicek against the Sixers in 1965. There was the series where Philadelphia almost blew a 3-1 lead against Boston in 1982. They played a 7th game in the old Boston Garden, yet Philly still came away with the victory. That was the series where they had the famous ghost that was lurking around the rafters of the seats of the Boston Garden. And, of course, the names of the past also should be mentioned, like Havlicek and Larry and Julius and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish. Once they start each other, once they go up against each other, and they start their series tonight. Once they go up against each other, it's going to get really. This has the potential to be really, really ugly.
Now, I'm not saying that this is a bold prediction, but out of the 4 teams, the Warriors versus, let's say, the Warriors versus who comes out on top out of the 4 teams?
I still like Golden State coming out of the West, and I really, really think the way they showed their mettle yesterday, I still like Cleveland to come out of the East. Cleveland just has the dominant superstar. And
it may be a repeat. Now, if the Spurs were to win, do you still see Cleveland? And if you do see Cleveland, how do they match up?
The Spurs already lost, man.
I'm not the Spurs. I'm sorry. James Harden team, the Houston.
I'll tell you what. If in the event the Rockets do beat the Warriors and they have a potential matchup with Cleveland, this could get really, really, really juicy because you would have 3 superstars, 2 of whom are the best of friends, Chris Paul and LeBron, going up against each other. Whereas LeBron is the more dominant player, I think Houston has a much better backcourt with Harden and Paul. Either one can handle the ball. I think Harden is probably the better, just by an inch. He's probably the better creator of shots for teammates, which is saying a lot because LeBron has had his games where he's recorded triple-doubles. I think LeBron has a little bit of a tendency to be more unselfish than James does. Than James Harden does, I should say.
Right. Yeah, James Harden's more of a shooter. But so let me ask you. So other than that,
in the event of a Cleveland versus Houston final, I do like Cleveland.
Wow. And how does now out of just saying Boston or the Sixers or Toronto, how would they match up against the Rockets if they were to win?
Boston or Philly against who?
The Rockets.
Boston or Philly against Houston in a potential final.
Yeah. Either or. Because who's got in Toronto? If Cleveland loses, who do you see? Because it seems like the Sixers have the better bench and better shooting, and they have a better guard because they got a 6'10" guard in Ben Simmons. And Toronto, you got two great backcourts in Toronto too, and you got two backcourts. It goes by whoever has the best bench or whoever's got the best center, right?
This is true.
So,
as far as a potential matchup with Houston, for example, let's take Philly. Philly has got so many weapons that they can work with that they're going to give Houston a lot of problems. But at the same time, I think Houston has improved defensively to the point where they might be able to counter the backcourt a little bit. Joel Embiid is going to give them a lot of trouble in the middle, I'll tell you right now. At the same time, Houston does have a really solid role player, Clint Capella, who's really grown by leaps and bounds, especially on the offensive end. He's added a mid-range jumper to his arsenal. So as far as a potential Houston versus Philly matchup, whereas Philly can probably give them problems with depth, Houston will give them a lot of problems because of the backcourt and because of the role players that they have. Dare I say that Philly would probably win a championship series against Houston?
And Toronto?
Toronto versus Houston, a matchup of two really strong backcourts on each side. The only difference is I think Toronto has a little bit more depth on the front line.
Wow. Now, question. You've seen all the things that are happening in the NBA. Who's staying? Who's going? Where do you foresee LeBron going, Paul George going, Carmelo going, some of these other players? And with the New York Knicks, do you really think they're going to pick the person that Barkley, the guy that you said they were going to pick, or the European kid, that 6'8" European kid that they're talking about?
Are you talking about in the draft?
Yes, in the draft, but also where do you see? Do you see the Lakers getting Paul George, or do you see them going to the Houston Rockets or the Spurs?
That's been the hot rumor that's been going around for the last 8 to 10 months already. I still see Paul George in L.A. After this disaster that just happened, how could he possibly go back to Oklahoma City knowing full well the tough season that he went through? Not only that, but you look at every single player that has left Oklahoma City, with Russell Westbrook being there. I mean, look what's happened. James Harden has been a potential MVP. Kevin Durant's already won a championship. And just last summer, Victor Oladipo played sparingly in Oklahoma City. He had a much better season with the Indiana Pacers this year. His teammate, Domantas Sabonis, he also had a tremendous season. It seems like anybody that works with Russell Westbrook, they don't get a chance to figure in the offense at all. Whereas if they leave Oklahoma City, they become a totally different player.
Yeah, just when you leave the Knicks. But how do you now? They're like Whitehead from Miami. Where do you see Whitehead going?
You mean Hassan Whiteside?
Whiteside, excuse me. Yes.
Hassan Whiteside is going to have a little bit of a problem because he signed a pretty fat contract, And it's going to be pretty tough for him to get moved by the Heat. Even if they wanted to, it's going to be really, really tough. He's going to have to go somewhere that could really use his defensive prowess and his rebounding and his ability to alter shots. Because something happened in Miami where he got significantly less playing time. I don't know what it was, but I'll tell you right now, if he's going to continue to be rotting on the bench the way he is, then he needs to get out of there. And I just found out one of the Celtics star players, Jaylen Brown, he's missing game one of the Sixers series tonight. He hurt his hamstring, and that's a big loss for the Celtics. Jaylen Brown is a guy who's added a lot of athletic ability for them and also added a lot of great scoring abilities for them.
How do you see that European kid that the Knicks are talking about, the 6'8"? I think he's a forward. He's a good shooter. To me, I think you should get the other guy, the guy from college, the one we're talking about, defensive-minded person. They're always talking about defense. And they never play it.
Do you have a name?
I forgot the guy's name. He's in the Dave Platt when they interviewed David Platt. But who was the guy that you said that the Knicks should get from college? Which
Mikal Bridges from Villanova. Yeah. Mikal Bridges from Villanova. That's somebody who a lot of the so-called scouts or experts have been hoping that the Knicks would be able to draft. Excuse me. They're also mentioning Trey Burke from Oklahoma. They're also mentioning one of the kids from Kentucky. That's another thing. There's a lot of underclassmen that have declared for the draft that are going to be hoping to get hooked up with a particular team. But right now, if I'm the Knicks, I would definitely go after Mikal Bridges. He is the defensive stopper that the Knicks have been looking for a long, long time.
Unless, because right now who do you think is going to be their coach? Considering, they've interviewed about 10 coaches so far. I mean, I know who you want, but do you think that they're making the process correctly by taking their time a little bit and taking out this more specific one, or should they rush it now? The draft date.
It's not like there's any rush that they need to go into, but at the same time, we would like to see somebody in place before the draft, which is next month. Now, that's to answer your second question. To answer your first question, who should be the head coach? That's anybody's guess. Who I would like to see considered for the head coaching job, it's got to be Mark Jackson. I mean, it would make for a really full circle homecoming story when you think about it, because not only did he play 6.5 years out of his 17 years in the league with the Knicks, something tells me that maybe he might have some unfinished business with the franchise, because he never really had a chance to get any closure with the franchise. So
I can see them. I'm sorry. I was going to say I can see them picking Juwan Howard or Kenny Smith. I can see them going in that direction. Why? I don't know. But I can see them going that route.
Someone actually mentioned Patrick Ewing, but Patrick already has a job, and I'm not sure that getting somebody who was .500 in his rookie season as a college head coach is the right idea.
No, that's like getting Jay White.
Oh, brother. Yeah, Jay Wright of Villanova.
Jay Wright.
It's not like he has anything left to prove. He's won a couple of national titles at Villanova, two in the last 3 years. At the same time, this is his dream job, to be coaching close to his Philadelphia hometown. Why would he want to leave the comfort of something like Villanova, Pennsylvania? He's got it all over there.
Sometimes you want to prove yourself to see if you can do it, because look how many people did. I mean, Larry Brown, Rick Pitino, the Shark. Even though the Shark didn't do that well when he was
Jerry Tarkanian, that was a complete and unmitigated disaster. I'll tell you that right now. Oh, wow. I mean, God rest his soul, but he never, ever should have taken that Spurs job whatsoever. That was a black mark on his career.
But switching gears to football, because the draft came up.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think all the teams did? Did the majority of the teams improve themselves, or did they just stay stagnant? I mean, look at the Cleveland Browns. They had 3 picks.
Mm-hmm. And they got the quarterback that they wanted, apparently, which is Baker Mayfield, which is a pretty gutsy move considering all of the heat that he's gotten from the media.
That's a hit or miss with him.
Yeah. I think you could say the same thing with each of the quarterbacks that wound up getting drafted here. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson as well.
Saquon Barkley was a good pick for the Giants.
Saquon Barkley was a wonderful pick for the Giants.
You hit it on the nose. That was a good pick for them.
It was just brilliant strategy that Dave Gettleman used in assessing this draft. It was painfully obvious he was not impressed with any of the quarterbacks that were in this year's draft.
Now, the Jets, do you think that this guy here that they picked, was it worth trading all those picks? Or...
In my eyes, yeah. They needed a franchise quarterback, and Sam Darnold was the one in their eyes. And it's not like he's just some Johnny-come-lately. I mean, the talent is good. His talent is there. I mean, he's got a strong throwing arm. He can make the reads when he has to. His anticipation of defenses is really good. He just needs to take care of the football. And the same thing can be said for Lamar Jackson of Louisville, who became the last pick in the first round by Baltimore.
Now, the Giants also got Hernandez.
Will Hernandez from Texas El Paso, who a lot of people say has a real mean streak to him. And if you could get an offensive lineman who can kick somebody's butt out on the football field, more power to you.
And they also re-signed Bass, was it? Am I correct?
Which one?
Bass. I know they were talking about a gentleman named Flower and a guy named Bass, but maybe I'm wrong in Bass one. But most of what the Jets did in the draft, they did well. Correct?
Yep.
And most of the picks that the Jets made, that was good for them as well. Correct?
Definitely correct for them. And it's interesting because the Giants usually draft defensively more often than not with all of their picks, but it was painfully obvious that after finishing with a 15.4 average per game for the 2017 season, they wanted to improve their offense in the worst way. And going through some of the draft picks that the Giants and the Jets made, you can argue that the Jets were a little bit more in tune, especially with in the first couple of rounds, that the Giants and the Jets wound up drafting offensively.
We next week hopefully we'll get who went where, and we'll go down the line to see if they improved or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be good. But all in all, now that they've got that, where do they need to improve now?
Definitely defense.
Giants need to improve now.
The Giants still need work defensively. And seeing what they did in the middle rounds getting Lorenzo Carter, who's an edge rusher from Georgia, getting a couple of other guys as well. I'm checking out the draft history here. Also, R.J. McIntosh from Miami. They got him in the 5th round. And then after that,
right? Because I was going to ask.
I see the Giants sacrificed quite a few picks in the 3rd, 4th, and 7th rounds. The Jets, by the way, they really made multiple use of their other draft picks after number 1. For example,
okay,
let's see here. They did not have a pick in round 2, but round 3, Nathan Shepard, who's a defensive tackle out of Fort Hays State, and also Chris Herndon, a tight end from Miami, and they definitely needed tight end help, especially after losing Austin Safarian-Jenkins to Jacksonville. And then after that, round 5, no picks. Round 6, they had back-to-back picks in round 6. They picked an inside linebacker and a cornerback. Christian Sam from Arizona State and Parry Nickerson from Tulane, which is not bad. And also, they got a running back, Trenton Cannon, out of Virginia State.
Do you see both teams? Do you see both teams being young, or in the middle with youth and veterans, or too old?
With the Giants, it's definitely in the middle. I mean, they're building with all new players, some of whom are veterans, a couple of whom are also guys that have been around maybe 2 or 3 years. With the Jets, I think it's definitely a matter of them building through the draft because
age-wise, how do you see them age-wise? Are they in the 20s to 30, 35 or lower?
I see the Giants slightly older, especially at quarterback, especially on the defensive line, especially with guys like Snacks Harrison. But in the as far as the Jets are concerned, definitely much younger at quarterback, much younger at receiver as well. And they got significantly younger at tight end with their draft pick. And I think now, I think they're much younger on the offensive line as well. Defensive line, they're definitely much younger, especially getting Leonard Williams or extending Leonard Williams' contract for another year.
With the people that are out there, who do you, as a free agent, because now it's time for free agent and see how they finagle with a cap, who do you see them get to fill up the holes that they need?
Who do I see the Jets and the Giants filling?
Yes. Who do you think it's possible that they can get? Not who you want, who you think they can get.
Who do I think they can get?
Yes.
Well, there's plenty of names out there. As far as what they should do, I think the Jets can probably add a little bit more help in their secondary. I think the Giants can use a lot more help on the offensive line, that's for sure. I mean, the Will Hernandez pick is one thing, but they need to add more than that. I would think that they could use a little bit more depth at running back. And they already signed Jonathan Stewart, who's the guy who's been around for 10 years. My guess is he's going to be doing a little bit of tutoring to Saquon Barkley, which makes a lot of sense. Defensively, I think they need to add a little bit more at linebacker, especially some youth at linebacker. I think they need to add youth in the secondary. Mm-hmm. So that's specifically where the Giants could use some help.
Who do you see them getting, though? Who do you think they should get now? That's out there in the free agent.
Well, that's a really good question. Let me see if I can find some free agents that could be available.
Within reason, because everybody wants the All-Stars and so on. It would be because you picked it with who they they got in the draft, which is actually pretty hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's a lot of free agents out there now. Now it's time for free agency and see how much cap they have open.
Exactly
Because
right.
I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a Dallas Cowboy fan, and he said that the picks that the Dallas Cowboys made were terrible.
I think if you were to ask any other Cowboy fans, they would probably say the same thing.
And it seems like Cleveland Browns should do well if that hex that they have upon them can lift.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at some of the free agents that are available right now, and there's a long list of guys as far as who they should add overall. Des Bryant is still without a job, yet the Giants are not going to consider him.
If he's within price range and he wants to win, I think it all depends. Do you want to win a championship or do you want money? That's what it boils down to, if you're willing to do within reason. Now, could the Jets use him as well?
Oh, without question. I mean, he would be the number one receiver that the Jets have been looking for a long time.
And that's what's out there right now. Now, there's a lot of defensive people out there, correct?
Oh, yes. There are quite a few defensive guys out there. As far as who they should probably get, let's see. As far as edge rushers, I see guys like Junior Gillette and Connor Barwin are still available. Robert Ayers is still available. Courtney Upshaw, too. David Bass is also out there. But then you have guys who are really long in the tooth, like Ahmad Brooks or Elmis Dumerville or Tamba Hali. As far as linemen are concerned, well, unfortunately, Ndamukong Suh is already off the market. He signed with the Rams. Jonathan Hankins is still available. So is Jay Bromley. So is Tyrone Walker. But then, once again, you're going into old territory. You got Frosty Rucker and Tony McDaniel and Pat Sims. As far as linebackers, Navarro Bowman is approaching his 30th birthday. I'm not really sure that's such a good idea. Carlos Dansby, who's proven, but also 36. Derek Johnson's out there. Ray Maualuga's also out there. Jonathan Casillas as well. Jelani Jenkins, Keenan Robinson, Justin Durant, Akeem Ayers. As far as guys in the secondary, there are no big name defenders in that secondary to choose from. As far as safeties are concerned, Quentin Demps is 32 years of age. Do you want to pay a lot of money for a 32-year-old safety? T.J. Ward, Darius Butler, Ladarius Webb.
Maybe.
What's that?
For a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract, yeah, maybe. It all depends what's coming out next year.
If they can get a guy like him for 2 years, then that would be a real bargain. Then you have guys who are approaching AARP membership, like D'Angelo Hall, who's 34. And then you have guys who are restricted free agents, all of whom are basically re-signed. There's very, very, very little to choose from. All the big names are under contract, and all of the guys who are basically role players, you don't know what to make of them.
Isn't there a new league that's supposed to be forming, not the XFL, but I think next year, a new league that after it's going to be the summer league that the NFL is supporting. It's coming out, and then the XFL is supposed to come out. Did you hear about that?
I know that there's a spring league that's already taking place now. Not sure if they're affiliated with the NFL, but I do know that there's a spring league right now. One that Johnny Manziel is playing in. Now, as far as in, apparently there's something called the Alliance of American Football. That's going to be supposedly debuting next year. And of all people, Steve Spurrier has already signed up to be one of the league's first coaches for one of the teams. And one city that's going to have a team is Orlando.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you something. Does it water down now that there's places that football players can jump around now?
As far watered down,
Yes. With
maybe.
so many leagues coming up, because you got the XFL coming in 2020. You got this league coming up. And, oh, did you find out what happened to Kaepernick as well? I know he won his case, but...
Yeah, Colin Kaepernick was all set to have an interview with the Seahawks. But when it came time for him to pass on his protest, for lack of a better word, and stand for the national anthem, he would not do that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
So he cost himself an interview.
Again, I hope he takes him to task at court again, because he did win the case.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be that way, but let's see what happens. Maybe he'll do great in the other league, and then they'll want him back.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of things going on. Toronto, in hockey, Toronto lost. Lou Amarillo's gone.
Yeah, he only agreed to be the general manager for 4 years as per their contract. So he did a really good job making that team a contender again. They made the playoffs the last couple of years. But he made it loud and clear it was only going to be a short-term opportunity, which was his prerogative. So all we could say is we can wish him well, but tell you what, that's a big loss for the Maple Leafs, because he really did a lot to improve that team.
Do you see him going anywhere else?
I wouldn't rule it out, but at the same time, considering his advanced age, he's approaching his 70s. It could be time for him to maybe take a break.
Let's see what happens.
We'll definitely see what happens. I'll tell you what, they're going to get one great GM, though. He's a great talent evaluator. He knows how to build teams from scratch. I mean, he practically did that with the Devils for almost a quarter century.
Love to see him with the Islanders, see what he can do.
Oh, brother, if he can go to the Islanders, that would be the greatest public relations coup that the Islanders have ever scored. Because right now, that team, that franchise, is a train wreck.
That once great franchise. It was great.
That once proud franchise, which has an incompetent owner, an equally incompetent general manager who somehow still has a job after 10 years. Why is he still there?
Have many people complained about him?
Every single Islander fan has complained about this guy. They've complained about his trades. They've complained about his signings, both in the free agent market and from the draft. Now they're facing probably the biggest disaster of all, and that's losing John Tavares. They cannot lose a kid who basically has turned into their franchise player.
And why are they losing him?
He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year.
That's why they're losing him. Okay,
Yeah.
because he doesn't see the team going in the right direction.
I honestly don't think that franchise is going in the right direction right now.
And how do you see the Rangers and the Devils right now?
At least the Devils were able to surprise some people and make the playoffs this season. It was a really short run. They lasted 5 games against Tampa, but man, they had some really, really good things going for them. Nico Hischier, who was their number 1 draft pick, had a very solid rookie season. Taylor Hall had probably the best season of any Devil this year. And now he's in line to be the league's most valuable player.
And the Rangers, how do you see them? And did they get a head coach?
Rangers got a lot of problems, man. They're getting significantly older. They have a couple of unwanted contracts that, quite frankly, they cannot get rid of any soon enough. And their farm system right now is anywhere from questionable to mediocre.
I thought they had some good players coming out of there. The 2 Russian guys.
Well, one of the Russian guys was pretty good. The other, the jury's out on him.
He's a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, all in all, how do you see? Do you think that when the draft comes for hockey, how long is their draft? Is it as long as football?
About 7 rounds, yeah.
And you see them going for offense, defense, or do most of the draft picks that they get normally go in their minor league system?
The draft picks, they vary from all across the world. I mean, they vary from the Ontario Junior Hockey League and the Quebec Junior Hockey Leagues, the Western Hockey League, the college circuit here in the States, even from the European teams.
And, you know, I found something very interesting. They were talking about the Yankees home run system.
Yeah.
That they're going to have a lot of people going for the batting for the home run lead. How do you see them doing that? And right now they're on a 9-game winning streak.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting season. If the Yankees hit, they're going to get Boston a real good run.
Yeah. And Boston's slumping all of a sudden. So the Yankees are right on their tails. And they're coming off a sweep over the weekend in Anaheim. And, of course, there was, before that, sweeping 4 games from Minnesota at home. But now this is where we really see what they're made of, because they have 4 games with the Houston Astros, the team that cost them the pennant last year and the team that won the World Series. It's critical that the Yankees win at least 3 out of these games in order to put themselves ahead of the pack from everybody else. Right now, the Yankees are 2 games behind the Red Sox in the division. And the Astros, they're 2 games ahead in the Western Division. When you think about it, this series that the Yankees have with the Astros, even though it's we're approaching the start of May, I think the Yankees would be really solid if they were to take 3 out of 4 in this series, because the Astros have had their number the last couple of years.
And the Mets with Syndergaard and Matt Harvey.
Matt Harvey is a train wreck now. Such a train wreck that he's been demoted to the bullpen, and he is very, very unhappy about it. In fact, his first bullpen assignment, he gave up a run, and then his next bullpen assignment, he couldn't even get through the inning unscathed. Every single inning that he's pitched out of the bullpen, he's been not able to get a 1-2-3 inning, and that only goes to show me and a lot of the Met fans, Matt Harvey, I think, might be approaching the twilight of his career a little too soon.
Or maybe he just needs a fresh new start in another team, or maybe he should go to the minor leagues, which I doubt. Give him a couple of starts down there to see if he can get it together and then bring him back up again. Because when you're a starter, it's hard. I mean, there are some people like from starter to reliever. Because when you're a starter, you have all those times to pitch and get over with it. When you're a reliever, it's very short.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you're throwing to get warmed up, it's not the same as facing a batter.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems that he could be having. It could be psychological. So, but all in all, the team. How do you like their coach?
How do I like the Mets manager, you mean?
Yes.
Overall, he's done well for himself. I mean, he's been able to manage his batting order very well. I kind of wish that he could stop micromanaging his pitching staff the way he has, specifically when it comes to matchups, because it's gotten to the point where some of these guys have gotten a little bit more work than they're supposed to in the early innings. The bullpen is where I have a little bit of a problem. One other problem are some of the pinch hitting opportunities that he's made. He's made some very strange pinch hitting opportunities, but his team has been winning. So other than that, he's doing well. I just wish that he could be a little bit more selective with his pitching staff.
How do you see Boone?
Aaron Boone with the Yankees?
Yeah.
Overall, well, so far so good for him. I think he's done. Overall, I think he's done a good job with the pitching staff. I would like to see him give his starters a longer leash, but otherwise, he's done everything that could be asked of him. More importantly, he's letting the hot hands in his lineup play. Have you seen what Miguel Andujar has been doing playing third base for them? He has been smoking the ball every single game. Ever since Gleyber Torres wound up getting promoted from the minor leagues, he's played fantastic defense at second. Right now, once some of his guys who are on the disabled list return healthy, he's going to have a really interesting decision to make. I'll tell you right now, if I'm him, I let these guys play.
Is there any team that's playing small ball? Because I don't think they do that anymore. Even bunting is a lost art. People don't know how to bunt anymore.
Bunting has become such an afterthought in this game that it's gotten to the point where even when you have guys on base, they're practically expecting the guy at the plate to swing. But to answer your question, no, there is no more small ball in this game. If there is, I haven't seen it. I certainly haven't seen it from the Yankees or the Mets.
A lost art. Phil Rizzuto, I miss you so much. But I tell you, what was fascinating? The greatest Royal Rumble.
So I've heard.
No women were allowed to compete. Sami Zayn, because he's Syrian, even though he was born in Canada, didn't want to go over there, or couldn't go over there, one or the other. And Roman Reigns lost again. Controversial. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm starting to like ROH and New Japan, but the big leagues will always be WWE at this point. But the greatest Royal Rumble, was it the greatest Royal Rumble of all time? Daniel Bryan, if you see his chest was reddish. It was like having not raw meat, but it was terrible. But he lasted an hour. He broke a record. Wyatt and Hardy won the championships, tag team championships. There was a lot of things going on. Good storylines. The Shinsuke Nakamura turning him heel versus AJ Styles. I didn't think he was a heel in the first place, but from what I was reading and told, he was a heel at one point. But I still think that they're lacking managers. For those people that can't cut promos, they need managers, and McMahon doesn't like managers anymore. Once in a while, a female manager, but I wish managers would come back, like Captain Lou and all them, because they were really good.
Mm-hmm.
They were really good. But it's 7:58 now.
Yeah. Before we sign off, I wanted to let you know we were supposed to have a guest tonight, which is Callie, who's a very well-known Mets fan here.
Right.
Unfortunately, due to a death in the family, Callie is not going to be with us tonight, so we're going to reschedule for another date.
Yes.
So with that said, I think it's just time that we bid you adieu.
It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye. Time to say goodbye. Hello. How are you?
So thanks to Hector on the phone. Also, thanks to my friend Lewis Cooper, who's on the other side of the glass for tonight. And, of course, thanks to you guys for watching at home. So for everyone here, I'm Jamie.
I'm Hector.
We hope to see you at the beginning of next month. Good night, everyone.